Welcome, everyone joining us. Thank you so much for being here today. We are so glad you could join us. I can see a few folks starting to come into the platform here, so welcome. So good to see you all. Fabulous. Welcome again. Thank you for being here. My name's Georgina Gorman. I'm the Executive Director of TreeSisters, and my wonderful colleague Ashley Tamburello, who is our Head of Impact and Engagement, will be joining us today too. Welcome to Growing Seeds of Change. We're so glad you could be with us. We have invited you here today to join us as just a small group of our most generous, caring, and loyal supporters. We wanted to share a sneak peek of our impact report from last year before we publish our annual reports as normal this year. And we wanted to share with you just how much your gifts and support have enabled incredible change for forests, for women, and for communities around the world. So thank you for taking the time to be with us. If you'd like to add your name and where you're joining us from in the chat now, as folks are arriving, that would be wonderful to see who's with us in the room. We might close the chat down during the session just so we can all focus, but depends how many people we have with us. We are also recording today's session, so those who couldn't be with us in this moment here can watch it back later. We like to start all our meetings at TreeSisters by arriving into the space and sharing gratitude for the earth. So we'd invite you into that practice with us now. If you'd like to set your eyes on a tree outside, perhaps, or on a plant in the room with you, or even just in your mind's eye, take a moment to put yourself in a beautiful spot in nature where you feel all of nature's abundance and all of the beautiful gratitude that we share for our Mother Earth. So if you'd like to take yourselves there now, and we'll just sit for one moment. Thank you for joining us in that moment. And it is so important that we do show gratitude for our earth and take moments like that because so much of the modern way of living really takes nature for granted. And taking these moments also gives us space to think about what is at risk, and what we could lose if we continue on the trajectory that we're on as a human species. You'll be familiar with all of the challenges that we face in the world today. So the climate crisis, the oppression of women, the destruction of our natural world, the pervasive influence of organizations and actors who are harming our planet, the erosion of democracies, the growing inequality, billionaires hoarding wealth. Honestly, the list goes on, but these are not separate issues from each other. They all stem from the same systems of power built on extraction, control, and endless profit, no matter the cost. And they are all built on this profound disconnection from the living world that sustains us all. The work we do at Tree Sisters is part of creating a better future and is deeply interconnected. As part of this movement already, you'll already know this, but to remind us all for a moment of our mission and why we're here today. Our action at Tree Sisters starts with nature connection because people will protect what they love. So we're trying to help people remember what used to be obvious to us all. We are nature. We are not apart from it, we are a part of it. And with that comes the responsibility to limit our harm, to live within its limits, to live within our planet's limits, and to give back where we can. One of the practical ways that we do that is through ethical, women, and community-led restoration. So we are actively fighting climate change. We are returning resources to the land and communities. We are restoring nature and protecting the planet, hopefully for generations to come. And we do all this with a focus particularly on women and gender equity. In a world shaped by patriarchy, our work uplifts women through funding, training, platforming, and advocacy as well. We've always stood for systemic change and using our voice and connections and influence to push for change and to spotlight another way. So use the privilege that we have for good. We want to move away from the systems of oppression and control and towards balance and restoration and peace. Being a tree sister is all of these things and more. And it is so much more than just planting trees. It's believing that there's a better way of living on this planet and taking real steps to rebuild our relationship with Earth and with each other. Now, this year has been incredibly tough for the whole of the charitable sector, and Tree Sisters has not been immune from that. But we remain rooted in our mission as always. And your belief in that mission matters now more than ever. So, thank you for standing together with us, and thank you for being here today. And more than anything, thank you for being a tree sister. You already know our roots are so much deeper than just planting trees, and you're here because you truly care for nature, for equity, and for balance. And we thank you so much for that. We are deeply grateful for your support and are so proud to share this space with you today to tell you all about the impact of your gifts in the last year. It's timely for us to meet because just last week we passed the Earth Overshoot Day, which is the day that humanity's demand for ecological resources exceeds the resources that Earth can regenerate within the year. So for 2025, we would need 1.8 Earths to meet humanity's demands from her. So from now until the end of the year, we're essentially living on credit, and that credit is borrowing from our future. And that future is looking uncertain unless we act now. But there continues to be hope. Around the world, people are joining together to protect and restore nature and live in reciprocity and balance with the natural world. And your support of our work allows women like Rosalind to restore their landscapes whilst finally getting a seat at the table. So thank you. Some final housekeeping before we continue on. We have an hour together today and we should have time for Q&A at the end. Thank you if you shared any questions in advance as well. We really appreciated that. You're also welcome to add any questions into Zoom in the Q&A function as we go, and we'll pick those up at the end. We have a trigger warning in place for today around gender-based violence and sexual violence. It's something that's an issue in our projects and many projects focused supporting women around the world, but it's also something that we're able to support working against. So it's something that we might mention today. We also want to share a transparent disclaimer that these figures are as accurate as they can be in the context that we work in. So sometimes there can be challenges with reporting figures, with cultural norms, sharing figures about women, which I'll talk about later. And our reporting year as a charity runs from April to March, so that's why we've said 24 to 25, whereas some of the projects start at different times of the year and work in line with their local rainy seasons. So sometimes we might mention different time periods at certain points, particularly talking about individual projects. We'll call that out when that's the case. So that was all the housekeeping done, and I'm going to hand over now to my wonderful colleague Ashley, who's going to share more about our restoration and reforestation work this year.
Thank you, Georgina, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening. As Georgina said, we wanted to talk a little bit about our different strands of work, one of which is restoring and reforestation. And we know that when we look around the world, that the signs are absolutely clear that we see rising temperatures, we see unpredictable rainy seasons, we see dying forests, and above all, we see ecosystems that are fracturing right in front of us. We know that climate change is no longer a distant threat, and it's a reality, and it's here. And unfortunately, it disproportionately impacts women and children and those that are working closest to the land. So those women in rural communities are the women that we work with, and those are the ones who are most impacted by climate change. Our restoration strategy here at Tree Sisters believes that the path forward isn't just about planting trees, but about planting equity, restoring dignity, and rewriting the bond between people and the earth. Tree Sisters has been around now for 11 years, and we've worked across many, many countries, but we have come across one lesson that repeats itself over and over, and that is when our projects are women and community-led, the forests around them thrive. Community-led restoration, which is the process in which Tree Sisters works, delivers higher survival rates, stronger biodiversity, and longer term impact because it's rooted in the local knowledge and ownership of the people and the land. 90% of the projects at Tree Sisters have trees chosen by the community for their food, medicinal, and ecological value. Those forests became safe havens for all types of life. We'll see some of those that have returned to the forest in just a moment. We know that community-led forests typically achieve 15 to 30% higher survival rates than externally managed projects, so projects that are managed potentially in the global north but operating in the global south. And we know that people are more invested in what they plant. Restored forests absorb CO2, stabilize soils, and reduce floods and landslides. And they protect both people and ecosystems. And in fact, in one of our projects in Uganda, we've previously seen landslides, and those are decreasing because of the bamboo planting along the riverbanks in those communities. We also know that training in agroforestry, seed saving, and eco enterprise provides the women that we work with alternative income sources in addition or in contrast to slash and burn farming or charcoal production, which also eases the pressure on their local forests. So we know that when community projects are women and community owned, the impact is ecological, social, and systemic. We know that forests recover faster, communities become more climate resilient, and women gain agency, income, and voice. So this is why our restoration projects outperform traditional Western approaches. They're rooted in reciprocity, they're sustained by local stewardship, and they're designed for long-term resilience. The next slide is a map of our projects from around the world for the last year. As Georgina said, we're looking at 2024 through 2025. And the projects all over the global south. The titles and the locations are there. Today, we will talk about a few of those projects, but if one of those catches your eye and you go, oh, I'd really, really, really love to know more about the project in Bolivia, for example, or more about the project in Colombia, you can certainly read more about those on our website as well as through our social media pages. It has been an incredible year of impact. We're incredibly proud of the work that we've achieved and that our partners have achieved. The donations that we've received by you and our business partners have supported so many people, communities, and trees. We have funded over 210,000 trees with a 90% average tree survival rate. So what that means is the trees just aren't being planted and they're being counted and then 6 months later they die. We have methods in place that ensure that those trees are being monitored and their survival rate is high. For normal restoration projects that are community-led, it's higher than any other type of restoration project. But with community-led, we see survival rates of about 70 to 90%, and our projects are on average at 90%, with a few projects reporting as high as 97%. So incredibly high. With this, we've seen 340 hectares restored. We've worked across 7 countries, which you saw in that past map. 23% of our trees this year were agroforestry trees, which is new to us and quite interesting. And we know that those trees they support economic independence, they create kitchen gardens, and they of course have local nutritional benefits. They also increase biodiversity for the region and they support pollinators. So all super important parts of the agroforestry community for those trees. We also have seen 19,800 direct project participants, 37,600 beneficiaries, and 175,900 indirect beneficiaries. So that's the amount of people that work directly with the projects, then those who are benefited. So it might be family, could be classmates, we even have a football team who's been planting trees. So it's people who directly are next to those people but didn't actually participate. And then indirect is everyone who might live within the region who benefit from increased coffee production or increased fruit production. Could be they also benefit from something like the reduced landslides that we mentioned earlier. So massive impact this year. We have this absolutely beautiful quote from someone in the community in one of the projects in Brazil. And we have acknowledged and we've seen that in many of the ecosystems and the environments that have been reforested, we have a return of wildlife. And some of those are birds, some of those are animals, some of those are pollinators, like we mentioned previously. In some cases, that might be things like seeing poop in the area, or it might be a bird flying by. But probably our most impressive thing that has come through is the video of a herd of elephants coming through one of the restored regions in Kenya. You'll see that there's a baby there, which is absolutely heartwarming. And this area before the reforestation was completely barren. There was nothing there. And the reforestation took off in this area, and it was so successful that a herd of elephants returned to the land. So their presence here is an absolutely powerful sign that when we care for the land, nature responds. From here, I'm going to kick it back over to Georgina, who's going to share some of our projects about women's leadership and gender equity.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Yeah, I'm always worried about following up the restoration impact because those are just absolutely incredible numbers, and I'm not sure that I can live up to videos of baby elephants, but I have a good chance because I'm talking about women's leadership and gender equity, and that is so important to our mission at Tree Sisters. Again, you'll know that from being part of our movement. But we truly believe that restoring the land must go hand in hand with addressing social inequalities, and environmental degradation and gender-based injustice are deeply linked. Focusing on women is not about the exclusion of men, it is about the inclusion of everyone. Everyone must act to save our planet. And to regenerate ecosystems, we must uplift those the most impacted and the least heard. Particularly, that means women and women of colour and Indigenous women. So I mentioned they're the most impacted. Sorry. So globally, women are disproportionately affected by climate change, and that is often due to systemic factors like social factors, cultural, economic, political, legal challenges. It can be things in practice like that women rely heavily on forests for essentials like water, firewood, food, medicine. All of those are resources which are increasingly degraded by climate change and deforestation. And as those forests disappear, because it's women that are reliant on those forests for those resources, well, the women are having to walk further to collect those resources, which can impact their health, can take more time out of their day, but also importantly, they can face even greater risks of things like sexual and gender-based violence by having to travel deeper and deeper into forests to be able to collect those resources. And it's not just women's everyday lives that are affected by climate change. So during climate change related natural disasters, women and children are 14 times more likely to die than men. And that can be because of things like cultural norms around clothing differences. So, where women are more likely to be wearing looser layers or long dresses that can impede people, women's particularly, escape if in things like floods and landslides. It can be that women are more likely to be the ones in the house looking after children and elders. And so perhaps they're less likely to attempt an escape without leaving women and their elderly family and relatives behind. In some cultures, it's not accepted to leave the house without men. So, in some instances, it's reported that women were waiting for men to return home before they were able to flee, which has unfortunately led to deaths. And also not being informed of when information about an impending disaster has come through because it's shared between high status roles and often they're taken by men. So sometimes that information can travel from men to men, and women don't know that there is an impending disaster facing them. And even when women survive these disasters, they can face lower life expectancy afterwards. Now, even though women are the most impacted, they are also among the most effective change makers. And one of the reasons for that is because they have deep knowledge of the forest. I've mentioned that they are, the ones reliant on the forest, so they're more likely to understand its needs. And they also have a really great understanding of the social factors like what's needed in the community. So they should absolutely have a voice in any decisions about restoration and anything anything ultimately should have women's voices. So that's why all our restoration projects embed gender equity and are led by the needs and cultures of local communities. Many projects that we run include agroforestry training. Ashley mentioned earlier around agroforestry. They include paid employment. So that means that women are able to take on higher status work than they would normally be allowed to do. We have projects training them in leadership, enabling them to take on community leadership roles and also have a say in decision making. Asha mentioned kitchen gardens. We've supported the training of folks to grow fruit and vegetables in their own gardens, which improve food security and nutrition, but also creates a secondary avenue of income because they're able to sell the surplus that they grow. Also, training women how to install eco-friendly cook stoves that reduce health risks and protect the forests because they reduce the amount of firewood needed by about 4 times as much, and mean that women only have to go out once a week compared to about 4 hours a day going out to collect firewood. And as I mentioned, that's where some of the risk can be when the forests are reducing in size, that they're having to go deeper into the forest. So we're actually able to reduce the amount of firewood that they need, which means reducing their risk, but also reducing deforestation and protecting the forests for the future. Within a project, we've enabled the women there to restart a reusable sanitary pad enterprise, which brings in income but also supports menstrual health. And enables younger girls to stay in school instead of having to skip school or drop out because of period poverty, essentially. Um, and also, there's projects that mobilise gender champions, which I'm going to talk about a bit later in a moment as well. So we try to take a holistic approach to gender equity, and there's many different ways that that can look like. And we're always community led. So we talk to our partners about what they need, and they share where they're at culturally and what's going to work for them in the environment that they're in. And more than just in restoration, we always aim to uplift the voices of women in these partnerships, but also throughout the restoration sector, and just generally try to create a state of change to create some more balance in society where we're challenging some of the patriarchal norms and supporting women's empowerment and gender equity around the world. Our work just recognises that women are not just victims of these crises, they are powerful agents of change. And our mission is to amplify women's voices, to restore forests, and to rebalance our world. So, just to share with you some stats about what that looked like last year. So, in 2024 to 25, your support helped over 11,000 women to gain skills in forestry, to plant trees, to be trained in leadership, to become gender champions, all of those beautiful things that I've mentioned just a moment ago. Across all our projects, there's over 60% of participants identified as female. And importantly, we know that this figure is very likely to be underreported. And again, that's due to some of those cultural norms I mentioned and challenges facing women. So we know that it's likely that, particularly in one of our projects, they've reported that women, even if they've participated, they would put they would put their husband's name down on any project reports as the head of the household. They would be the ones taking credit, and in the project partners' words, they wouldn't dare to put their own names down. So we know that in those instances, those figures are very likely to be underreported. And also, it doesn't include girls. So we're just talking about women here. So we know that the impact on gender equity is even higher than that. And over 450 women have stepped into leadership roles, whether that be in their communities or in the projects themselves. So one of the projects where women are at the truly at the heart of is one of our project in the DRC together with Association Voix Libre. So in the Ruzizi Plain in Luvungi, DRC, if you can take a moment to imagine, the land once flourished with fruit-bearing trees, thick forest canopies, and traditional ecological knowledge was a given. It was passed down for generations within the community. But for decades of unsustainable logging, of conflict and neglect of the land had taken their toll, and therefore the forests were thinned, the soil turned fragile, rainfall declined, which all became a vicious cycle. Now, the forests around Llanvangui weren't just trees. As I mentioned, they were medicine, food, fuel, shade, shelter. So the communities that relied on agriculture there found themselves struggling to feed their families, and often women and girls bore the burden of walking further for firewood and food. It's interesting as well because communities had lost some trust in reforestation efforts in the area after there were failed NGO projects. And as Ashley mentioned, the kind of traditional way sometimes of taking the Western NGO approach can lead to some negative output. So the community was a bit untrusting at the beginning. And without a change there, the cycle of poverty and of environmental degradation would have just continued. In the words of a woman there, we used to farm with the help of nature. Now the land is tired. We needed to bring the forest back. And that's exactly what happened. So, as you can see from the slide, over 20,000 trees planted. That included over 12,000 fruit trees. So, you can imagine beautiful mangoes and mandarin fruit trees were grown, creating 16 edible squares in schools, churches, health centres, and households, creating enough food for families. Food security had therefore improved. And the remainder of those trees reforested 41 hectares with native tree regeneration encouraged. So that was throughout the Ruzizi Plain. The project benefited over 13,000 people directly and 85,000 people indirectly. So just absolutely huge numbers. Through the work, women had gained leadership, had gained confidence and recognition. Traditional leaders had joined, passing down biocultural knowledge, so restoring some of those roots that they'd lost over the years. And the youth in schools were planting the trees and learning about land stewardship. So it was creating a lineage almost of this sharing this knowledge again so that it would be safe for the generations to come. And again, in words of a participant, these fruit trees will improve my family's diet. The forest is becoming ours again. So the forest is returning, and with it, hope, food, equity, and ancestral memory. Because when the forests return, so does the future. And really, this project would not have been possible without the community relays. And community relays were 40 women trained to lead on community engagement and project activities. They went door to door with at least 20 households each to raise awareness about the importance of reforestation and protecting trees. They also helped to identify the sites to be reforested. They organised the tree planting. They distributed the seedlings, and they also led the monitoring. So it was an incredible role that these 40 women took on, and they weren't just participants; they were change agents. Often these women had little or no formal education. They found themselves leading training sessions, answering questions, coordinating the reforestation work. For many, it was their first time speaking in public. I'm going to go to the next quote now. It's just a beautiful one. And the experience they reported had transformed their self-esteem and social standing. And it's not just an impact for these 40 women, but their presence and leadership also raised the status of women across Llanvangui, where they had historically been marginalised. It showed a different way to the community and helped the community to reimagine what leadership can look like and who it can belong to. Moving to another project that just would not have been possible without incredible women leading the way in Rakoki, Uganda. Ashley mentioned this project earlier. It supported over 300 women to restore fragile lands on the steep Rwenzori mountainside. So it's a space where you can imagine that farming methods, deforestation, soil erosion had left the area overexploited. It's incredibly steep. And that means it was vulnerable to natural disasters such as flooding, drought, and also landslides. And again, recent landslides had caused multiple fatalities, most of whom were women and children. This project has therefore been restoring degraded landscapes. So they've been planting bamboo along the riverbanks, but they've also been tackling poverty, food insecurity, and gender-based violence. It's a holistic project looking at all elements that affect the women and communities in Kasese. It is one of the poorest regions in Uganda. Poverty levels are around 55%. And with that, malnutrition is prevalent. Around 45% of children under 6 have experienced impaired growth and development because of malnutrition. And Kasese has regularly experienced food insecurity crisis, with 1 in 3 people struggling to regularly find food. The region is also historically marked by domestic violence and gender inequality. So, a shocking statistic from 2021 is that 95% of women and girls reported that they had survived physical violence, sexual violence, or both from the age of 15. Our initiative in Kasese with Alpha Women Empowerment Initiative, who are an absolutely incredible group of local women, is just a powerful women-led reforestation and empowerment project that addresses all of these issues holistically, in such a beautiful way, through listening to the community's needs, and recruiting over them, training these women as leaders and field agents and change agents. It's established 2 nursery beds that are able to produce over 70,000 tree and bamboo seedlings per season. It's trained over 300 women in tree planting, in those kitchen gardens, in group leadership, also in energy saving cook stove construction, which I mentioned earlier. And you can see from the slide some of what they've already achieved. They've already planted nearly 30,000 trees, 10,000 bamboo grasses, which will help to restore that landscape and prevent future landslides. And those kitchen gardens are creating another income stream, but importantly, restoring nutrition for the families and for the children in the area. They've created over 300 kitchen gardens already. And over 36 women have been provided with startup inputs, which look like it could be tools or small seed funding, for them to set up their own businesses. So they'll have their own enterprises going forward. And also, they've trained 40 gender champions, which I'll talk about a bit more in a moment. So the results from this project are just absolutely incredible. As Ashley mentioned, the survival rate earlier, so 97% tree survival rate is incredible, and just a beautiful testament to the dedication and the skills of the women within this project and the care that they're giving for those trees. The riverbanks are better stabilised now with the bamboo. The food production has increased. The community is reporting better nutrition. They're able to sell their surplus already. Women have already taken on leadership roles in the community, and the harmony within the community has improved thanks to the work of the gender champions. Now, the gender champions, again, were 40 women who've taken on this role, and they've been trained to share knowledge with others about gender equity, but also to help intervene and counsel couples where there may be a risk of domestic violence, but also to signpost and encourage reporting in any cases where women have been a victim of domestic violence. So they play an incredibly important role within the project, and are helping to improve things for themselves and for their community, and also for future generations. There's a beautiful video which I will share with you now, which the project in Rakoki that I've just spoken about was an expansion of a successful initiative that took place in other sub-counties in Kasese. And part of that project was a gender training, which spoke to couples together about the benefits of profit sharing and about gender norms, and to uplift women, shared around all of the things that we've spoken about and how women should have a seat at the table. And this is just a beautiful video. I'm going to let Josephina and her husband speak for us.
Mkelen owe katrom wo mombora yembunga obutuko bwe hanyuma nabingani na mwira wayi tabituka banganako okuyisongesha umweni etukale mahawoma betu esa yarigulia etukalabanganaku isalemba kusya sente mubanyisombolo nemwira wawe netu twamasoma kumusomo owabatheke omwaka wahwere owa 2023 mubatusomesya erikolera hawuma kandi nerighabana ebikala omumwani hawuma neryo muthwasa twamaberererya ebyathwasoma erilwa kutukasomera kumutsomo abatheke twabiritsuka erima mwani wethu haimerere itwanoga haumerere twanikira haumerere twarondya kathala haumerere ekiru kyeriyawulya itwaghenda hayima itwaseka nesyasente syethu tukala hesi itwasighabira ebiyithawa byethu itunekirinizirye ngayowa esene ngawatwabuholo bunene namwira wayo hayima n'abana bayo kandi twabiritsuka erikulakulana mwasinja kutsibu aba alfa
omukyara wa ikabu Yezefina omusomo watwasoma nayo owabatheke twabirihambawo ebyo twasoma tunemubikolesya tunemuna omwani woyu tukanza erisomesya kuwu kw'abana.
Thank you for letting us bring the voice of Josefina and her husband to you today, and to share what your money has supported and your gifts and your time have supported over the last year. And we didn't even mention educating children, and that's such an important part of supporting women in these families, is that it's enabling children to stay in school, and particularly young girls. Part of being able to generate their income with things like the kitchen gardens and the startup inputs have enabled them to purchase school supplies, which has meant that they're able to keep their children in school. So we're going to move on to Nature Connection, and Ashley, I'm handing to you.
Thank you. I have seen that video a dozen times and I love it every single time. Really drives home the purpose of what TreeSisters is and why we're all here today. So if you reflect back to the conversation from about 35 minutes ago, we mentioned that TreeSisters is working within 3 different threads of work that are just completely intertwined: gender equity, ethical restoration, and nature connection. So we believe at TreeSisters that nature connection is at the heart of everything that we do. Scientific research shows that when people feel connected to the natural world, they are far more likely to care for it. And we believe that connecting with the natural world is essential to sustaining life on Earth. In much of the global north, our way of living has drifted far from what our ancestors once understood, and from the wisdom still held by many indigenous and local communities, that we cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. And again, we cannot continue to have infinite growth on a finite planet. We use our platform and, quite frankly, our privilege to advocate for a culture of reciprocity, one that acknowledges our dependence on nature and embraces the responsibility to live within her limits. The first step in restoring our planet is remembering that we are part of nature. So over the past year, we've expanded our educational resources and tools designed to inspire a global audience to see forests as living allies and not just resources. These materials encourage personal reflection and collective responsibility, helping each of us reconnect to the earth, and in doing so, change the trajectory of this rapidly changing world. Over the past year, we've had a really just so much growth in the area of nature connection. We're very proud of this. We've hosted 23 events, in addition to many that we've attended and learned from our peers. We have had almost 1,300 attendees attend these events, and we have educated and reached out to another almost 4,000. We've seen 439 forest bathing downloads, as well as launching our book club and our grounding webpage. Those resources are live, they are free, they are accessible on the website. So if you haven't already done so, please certainly access those. And we've had almost 1,100 visitors to our Nature Connection web pages. So while that is certainly something that we're very proud of, we also want to encourage all of our partners to incorporate nature connection within their projects, so that they can have better outcomes, but so also that we can learn what other communities do to connect to their restoration projects. So, as part of our agreements, we invite restoration partners to integrate their own cultural ceremonies, their ancestral practices, and any rituals that they have that might be meaningful to their local communities. By doing this, they strengthen the spiritual ties to the land and they share traditional ecological knowledge that reconnects people with earth and to each other. One of our projects in Bolivia, it's in the region of Cochabamba, Potosi, and La Paz, and these are some of the beautiful women in that project. They have incorporated indigenous customs such as Añi and Pachamama, which means reciprocal work and Mother Earth. And these ceremonies are integrated into the restoration process, which again reinforces those cultural traditions. This particular project, if you can imagine what it was beforehand, it was a dry hillside, and it was once alive with native trees, birdsong, and the footsteps of their ancestors. Over time, the land fell silent and barren. They had fires that scarred the hills. They had failing crops, and the families, particularly the women and children, walked for hours to collect water and wood. In the highlands and valleys of these regions, the women led and indigenous communities have watched their forests vanish. Deforestation, climate change, and economic hardship has left bare soils, food scarcity, and sacred landscapes lost. And with that, they have seen the disappearance of their wisdom of their generations. This Bolivia project, another beautiful reforestation project, but it offered not just the trees, but the restoration of life and dignity and relationship to the land. The project participants planted 45 edible squares, which are living gardens of fruit trees, medicinal plants, and shade-giving species. They had 12,000 trees took root, and 8,000 of those were fruit trees. The communities were involved in tree care, irrigation, and also the ancestral reforestation practices. Women led every single step. They designed, they planted, and they tended the land, and they wove in the traditional knowledge and modern agroforestry. This project came alive with ceremonies, storytelling, and school programs. And again, it tied that cultural and spiritual ties back to the land. The land did respond. 6 hectares are now stand reforested, 12 hectares are under natural regeneration, and 18 are now protected. They now have pollinators, the birds have returned, and they've seen Andean foxes walk the hills again for the first time in years. The families harvest fruit near their homes, reducing that need to walk for miles and miles, and this has reduced hunger and labor. One of the project participants said that we are not just planting trees, we are planting our future. This project has demonstrated that spiritual and ceremonial practices are not only symbolic add-ons, but they're core to how restoration is understood, initiated, and sustained. These projects helped incorporate cultural meaning into the restoration projects. They restored a deep community relationship with the land, and they deepened accountability to both nature and the community's ancestors. And the next quote, every tree planted is a blessing for the Pachamama, again for the Mother Earth. It's one of the beautiful participants in Bolivia. Also, as part of our nature connection work, we officially launched Rooted in Ethics. And if you've been involved in TreeSisters for very often in the last few years, you'll know that this is 5 years in the making. It was launched last summer, and it was a co-published document between TreeSisters and The Fountain, which is an organization of elder and spiritual leaders from original nations around the world. We celebrated it in Oxford with other people who work within the reforestation sector, and it has already informed our restoration strategy, and it will promote an alternative approach to ethical reforestation. We are very proud to announce that just in the past week, it has been announced that it is going to be used as a basis for an ethical framework within the Rights of Nature movement. As we look forward to the next year, we hope to expand awareness of Rooted in Ethics and secure funding for the next phase of work. Our goal is to make it more accessible, widely adopted, and deeply integrated into restoration practices and society as a whole. As it uses many words and content from original nations, it is open and free on our website. So if that's something that you're interested in accessing, please feel free to check it out, give us feedback, and let us know what you think of it. The next, we have a Rooted in Ethics video.
We're here at the launch of Rooted in Ethics, the Community Tree Stewardship Framework.
Fundamentally, most of our current crises relate back to the broken relationship between humans and nature, and we need to repair that relationship in order to solve those crises. And rights of nature is a way of doing that through the law.
All of this beautiful way of understanding the way that original peoples were looking at the skies and were relating to the cycles that they could see in the sky, encompassing the cycles of nature.
So much of the narrative around tree planting restoration is about quantifying nature. This is a completely different view of things. This is around a transformational approach, looking at how communities are affected, looking at rights of communities, but also looking at the rights of nature, looking at the fact that nature needs to recover.
The presentation of the Rooted in Ethics is just a manifestation of who we are, transcending from the old ways of being, from the me to the we, because we have to come together and solve this systemic crisis that we are living through.
Wow, and just yeah, to echo Mendahi's words there, to move from me to we is just such a fundamental part of this shift. And it was such an honour to be there in Oxford last year at the launch of Roots in Ethics. As Ashley said, it's some time coming. It's been 5 years in the making. Such an honour to launch it. And to be able to sit in ceremony with Mendahi to offer the work back to nature was really quite profound. So I'm glad we could share that moment with you as well, even if it was just by video. At least you're again part of this moment with us, to know we've birthed this into the world. So what is next for 2025 to 26? We are already 3 months into the year, which is quite incredible. Time always moves so quickly. But we remain rooted in the principles that have guided our work ever since our beginning. So care for the earth, the empowerment of women, deep commitment to ethical, community-led restoration, and fundamentally the vital importance of reconnecting with the natural world before it's too late, and living in a different way, in a way of reciprocity and receptivity and balance. We also recognise that the moment we're in the global context that I've mentioned at the beginning, calls for evolution and courage and clarity. We've always stood for systemic change at TreeSisters. More than ever, nature needs our voice. So we will continue this year to think of how we can use our voice of safety and sanctuary and keep the tone that we have always had, while stepping more intentionally into some of the advocacy and systemic change space, because we need action and we need to create change whilst we still can, whilst we also still have a habitable planet. So we will continue to raise awareness. It may be education, it may be influencing policy and culture, continuing to amplify grassroots voices, and perhaps standing in solidarity with some of the movements, like we've already begun doing. So we've already hosted an event around rights of nature at the London Climate Action Week, and actually the co-founder of Lawyers for Nature, who is a pioneer of nature's rights, Bronte Ansell, has joined our board of trustees. So we are in prime position to share around the rights of nature and bring to a bigger audience that we are nature, and therefore we need to protect her. We've mentioned around nature connection. We'll continue growing our offerings. We'll continue looking at how we can build accessible and inclusive and inspiring opportunities for people to reconnect with nature. We will always continue to champion restoration that uplifts women and centres local and Indigenous knowledge, and supports communities as leaders in ecological healing. We'll do this all whilst continuing to grow hopefully strong and resilient TreeSisters. As I mentioned earlier, the funding landscape has been challenging this last year. We will continue to flex and adjust as we need to, but we are committed to strengthening our internal foundations to ensure that Tree Sisters exists for as long as we are needed. As long as forests need to be restored, as long as women need to have support to bring their voices to the table, as long as we need to shift some of these systems of power and extraction, and as long as we are needed, we strive to be here. So again, thank you for your support throughout the last year, throughout many years. I know some of you have been loyal to us for many years. So I just thank you again for your commitment to this cause, for stepping up for Mother Nature. We have some more to come, but I want to open the room for questions if you have any. We had several questions submitted before the webinar today. Hopefully we've managed to address some of those in our presentation already. But again, the Q&A box is there if you'd like to ask anything of us now, or like to perhaps put anything in the I think the chat's still open, so you're welcome to pop anything in the chat there too if you'd like. Take a moment just to let that settle in, and perhaps folks might want to reflect and have some typing time. I'm going to keep an eye on the Q&A box. I'm not seeing any questions coming in just yet. But again, you're welcome to keep them coming. We've still got 9 minutes. You're welcome to keep them coming. And also, if something comes to you after today where you think I'd really love to hear more about that, or perhaps a question about anything that we've presented, any of the projects, any of the quotes, any of the stories. Oh, chat is disabled. Maybe that's just my settings though. You should be. Have we got the? Can we open up the chat? Got our lovely colleague Emily on the line, who should be able to help us with that. And you're welcome to, if you want to pop any, if it's a question that you have, again, I'm sorry, I can't see your name. It also just comes up with an anonymous attendee, whoever the wonderful person is who's put that into Q&A. You're also welcome to pop your question there or comment there if you'd like. I don't know if anyone else can see these questions, so I'm going to read this one out from S. Michael McCulloch. What needs to be done to expand these initiatives to other countries and communities? We need Tree Sisters all over the world. Wow, yes, we do. We absolutely do. We need to grow this movement. We all need to act, and yeah, we need to scale. Oh, sorry, my screen's just said, please move. Right, we are fine. We need to scale as much as possible. So we are so grateful for that question. And I will pop to what we can do with your support. So we will continue to do all these things. We will continue to strengthen women's leadership. If you're able to tell family and friends, if you're able to introduce us, that would be wonderful. If you're in a position to help to grow this movement and you would like to be able to support us financially or with resources or whatever that may look like, please do get in touch. We would love to have that conversation with you. If you're interested in funding at scale and you can support a specific project in its entirety, that would be fabulous. Or perhaps you might consider pledging matched funds for a future campaign of ours. There are many options. If you're in a place to support financially, that would be absolutely incredible. If you're not and you are able to provide any introductions or share with your friends and family, that would be wonderful. And we will continue to get out there. We will continue to grow awareness. We will continue to share this message that we all need to act and live differently and support women to restore their lands and support communities to care for nature. We will continue to do that through the year too. And we just, again, to say, no matter how big or small your gifts have been or could be, we're just so grateful for your support. We're so grateful for the Tree Sisters that we have around the world for your commitment. We are so grateful. And together we can continue to restore the earth, to restore relationship and to reimagine what is possible when women rise for nature. So again, just thank you for being part of this movement. Oh, there we go. Hello. Hi, Gary from Cleveland. Amazing. And so you've also shared a question, is there a new place you're in process of partnering? So currently our active projects span across Kenya, Uganda, Brazil, and we're just transitioning from DRC. Some of the projects that we have showed you and spoken about today, we've not been in a position to continue their funding um, for this year, and we would have loved to do. So there are some projects that we're already in partnership with, but not in a funding relationship with, and we would love to transition that to funding support with them as well. We also have budding partnerships with smaller scale. That's where smaller scale support is required, and those I believe are again in I think Brazil, I think Kenya. There are organisations there that we've already spoken to and would love to be able to support with funding in the future. So we continue to look mostly at the countries and communities where we have already have some strong local partnerships, but also if there is a need in a new place and there's a local community who has a really strong need and is able to we're able to work together, we'd be open to partnering in any location. So if there's somewhere that really sings to your heart, and you feel that there's a community in need, then we're always open to that conversation, expanding our methodology of how to support nature, how to work in harmony with the planet, and how to uplift communities and women to anywhere across the globe, because we all need it. It needs to happen more. So thank you, Gary, for your question there. I really appreciate that question. And again, any final questions, please do feel free to pop them in the chat box. Thank you to the two questions that came in from Ask Michael and Gary. I really appreciate it. And again, if you've not had your question answered, or if you're watching back to the recording and haven't had a chance to ask your question live, then please do reach out to us. We would be very happy to answer. And I think I have a keep in touch slide. So yes, I will get to it in just a moment. So you can find out how to do that in just a second. You're always welcome at our events. We love to see our Tree Sisters there. So there are a couple of upcoming events. The full moon gathering around the weaving, and this series is all about patterns in nature. The next full moon gathering is happening on the 11th of August. And the next book club is reading The Spirit of the Rainforest. And Ashley, who you've met today, had a conversation with Dr. Rosa, who is the author of this wonderful book. She spoke to her earlier this year. So in case you missed it, it's a wonderful conversation. And Dr. Rosa is incredibly inspiring. So if you haven't seen that, I would fully recommend you go look at that on our YouTube channel, and go have a listen in there. And we would love to see you in either of these events in the future, or any of our events in the future. We would love to see you. So again, I mentioned I'd share how to keep in touch. So if you need to reach out to us with a question, if there's anything you'd like a conversation around, or even just staying the most up to date with all of our work and updates and stories from women around the world, you can follow us on social media, or you can keep up to date with our website, or you may want to reach out an email. You're welcome to do any of those things. We'd love to hear from you. So a final thank you for today from me, from Ashley, from Emily on the call, from the whole team at Tree Sisters, from our restoration partners, and the thousands of women that you've given purpose and value and better opportunities to, from the forests you've restored for generations to come. And on behalf of nature herself, you've stepped up and continue to step up to care for her when the planet needs us to the most. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being a Tree Sister. Thank you, everyone. Take care.